Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of the Terra Nova, watching the massive alien ship approach through the endless black of space. The vessel looked like someone had carved a mountain from crystal and decided it could fly. Blue. Lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jake had seen many strange things during his 20 years in the Space Navy, but nothing quite like this. "Captain, they're responding to our greeting," said Lieutenant Lisa Park from the communications station. Her voice carried the excitement of someone witnessing history. "The translation matrix is working perfectly. They want to welcome us to what they call the Galactic Federation." Jake nodded slowly. 3 months ago, humanity had received the first message from beyond Earth. The signal came from a civilization that called itself the Zentari Empire, and it changed everything. No longer were humans alone in the universe. Now they were the newcomers, the children trying to join a family that had existed for thousands of years. "Are you ready for this, Dr. Park?" Jake asked the young woman who served as both his communications officer and xenobiologist. She would be humanity's first voice in galactic diplomacy. "As ready as anyone can be for meeting aliens, sir," Lisa replied with a nervous smile. "My team has studied their cultural briefings for weeks. The Zentari seem peaceful, advanced, and very interested in adding Earth to their federation." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Jake straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. The moment he had trained for his entire career was about to begin. Through the doorway stepped a figure that made him question everything he thought. He knew about life in the universe. Ambassador Kethver of the Zentari Empire stood 7 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift between silver and blue depending on the light. 4 arms extended from a torso that looked both alien and strangely graceful. 2 large eyes dominated a face that held an expression Jake hoped was friendly. The creature wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. "Greetings, Captain Morrison of the human species." Kethver spoke in perfect English, though his voice carried tones that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Ambassador Kethver, and I welcome you to the greater galaxy. Your species has taken its first steps toward joining our great federation." Jake extended his hand in the traditional human greeting, then remembered the briefings about Zentari customs. He placed both hands over his heart and bowed slightly. "Ambassador Kethver, humanity is honored by your presence. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge." The alien's 4 arms moved in what the cultural files had described as a gesture of pleasure. "Your species learns quickly. This is good. The Federation values those who can adapt to galactic standards. Come, let me show you what awaits humanity among the stars." They moved to the conference room where Jake's senior staff waited. Commander Ryan Hayes, a former Marine who now served as the ship's security chief, studied the alien with the careful eyes of a professional soldier. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's historian, took notes on everything she observed. The rest of the diplomatic team sat in respectful silence. The Galactic Federation spans 47 star systems and includes 23 different species. Kethver began, his voice filling the room with authority. "We have maintained peace for over 3,000 of your years through cooperation, trade, and adherence to our common laws. Your species would be most welcome to join us." "What would membership require?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer from the preliminary communications. Yes. The requirements are quite reasonable," Kethver replied, his large eyes seeming to glow brighter. "First, you must agree to follow Federation law in all matters of trade and diplomacy. Second, you must contribute to our common defense fleet. Third, and most importantly, you must abandon your primitive military practices and adopt standard galactic protocols." Commander Hayes leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean by primitive military practices?" "The Federation learned long ago that physical weapons are inefficient and barbaric," Kethver explained with what sounded like patience. "All civilized species use energy-based warfare. Plasma rifles, laser cannons, photon torpedoes, and similar technologies. Your species still uses projectile weapons and incredibly handheld blades. These are relics of a savage past. The Galactic Warfare Accords specifically prohibit the use of kinetic weapons in melee combat. The ambassador continued, they are considered crimes against civilization. Any species wishing to join the Federation must agree to destroy such weapons and adopt our advanced energy systems. Dr. Vasquez spoke up from her position at the table. Ambassador, may I ask why physical? Weapons are considered barbaric. From a historical perspective, they have been quite effective. Kethver's expression changed in a way that Jake hoped indicated amusement rather than offense. Doctor, your question shows the primitive thinking of your species. Energy weapons are precise, clean, and efficient. They can be adjusted for various levels of force, from stunning to complete disintegration. Physical weapons are crude, unpredictable, and messy. They belong to the dark ages of any civilization. But surely there might be situations where... Hayes began, but Jake cut him off with a subtle gesture. We understand your position, Ambassador, Jake said diplomatically. Humanity is eager to join the galactic community and will certainly consider all requirements for membership. Excellent, Kethver replied. I have brought energy weapons for your examination. Your military leaders will find them far superior to anything in your current arsenal. The plasma rifle alone can penetrate any armor your species has developed, and our defensive shields can stop any kinetic weapon. The meeting continued for several hours, with Kethver describing the wonders of galactic civilization. He spoke of worlds where cities floated in the clouds, of trade routes that spanned entire sectors, and of technologies that could reshape matter itself. It was everything humanity had dreamed of when they first looked up at the stars. Later, after the ambassador had returned to his ship, Jake found himself alone with his senior staff. The excitement of first contact had worn off, replaced by the weight of the decisions ahead. What do you think, Commander? Jake asked Hayes, who had remained unusually quiet during the latter part of the meeting. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Something bothers me about this, Captain. An entire galaxy that has forgotten how to fight with anything but energy weapons. It seems like they're missing something important. What do you mean? Lisa asked. I mean that in my experience, the moment you stop preparing for every kind of fight is the moment you become vulnerable to something you never expected, Hayes replied. But I'm just a soldier. Maybe I'm wrong, Jake nodded thoughtfully. The decision to join the Federation seemed obvious. Humanity would gain access to incredible technologies and become part of a vast galactic community. All they had to do was give up their old ways of war. It seemed like a small price to pay for the stars. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Federation, and Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the stars from the bridge of her flagship, the Earth defense ship Liberty. The human fleet had been integrated into the Federation's defensive network, their ships retrofitted with energy weapons and shield generators. Everything seemed perfect until the emergency alert pierced the calm of space. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Federation Command, reported Communications Officer Ben Carter, his voice tight with concern. It's coded as an alpha-level threat. Kate straightened in her command chair. In all her years of service, she had never seen an alpha-level alert. Put it through, Lieutenant. The holographic display activated, showing the worried face of Fleet Admiral Vexstar of the Zentari Empire. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by something Kate had never seen in an alien before. Fear. All Federation fleets are to mobilize? Immediately, Vexstar began without preamble. The Jactar horde has emerged from the galactic rim. They have already destroyed the outer colonies of Kepler 186 and Proxima Centauri. We are facing an enemy unlike anything we have encountered in 3,000 years. Kate felt her blood run cold. The briefings about the Jactar had been classified, but she knew enough to understand the threat. They were an ancient enemy that had disappeared into the void millennia ago, leaving behind only legends and warnings. Admiral Sullivan, your human fleet is to rendezvous with the Federation Armada. At the Tau Ceti system, Vexstar continued. We will make our stand there. The fate of the galaxy depends on our success. The transmission ended, leaving Kate's bridge in stunned silence. She had trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of galactic war. "All hands to battle stations," Kate announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. Signal the fleet to prepare for immediate jump to hyperspace." Meanwhile, on the human colony world of New Denver, civilian militia commander Amy Rodriguez was enjoying what she thought would be a peaceful morning. The planet had been settled only 2 years ago, and the colonists were still building their new lives among the alien landscape. That changed when the sky began to burn. The Jactar ships descended from space like falling mountains. They were not built of metal and circuits like Federation vessels, but seemed to be alive. Organic hulls pulsed with veins of dark energy, and weapon ports that looked like mouths open to rain destruction on the colony below. Amy grabbed her plasma rifle and ran toward the emergency bunker where her militia unit was gathering. The weapon felt strange in her hands after years of training with traditional firearms, but the Federation had insisted that all colonial defense forces use energy weapons. "Rodriguez, what's the situation?" called out Sergeant Danny Walsh as he emerged from the bunker with the rest of their squad. "Unknown hostiles attacking from orbit," Amy replied, checking her weapons charge. "They're not using any technology in our databases. The plasma cannons on the defense platforms aren't even slowing them down." The first Jactar ground forces began landing just as Amy's militia reached the main settlement. The creatures that emerged from the bioships were nightmares given form. They stood 8 feet tall, with multiple limbs that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. Their skin looked like living armor, dark and segmented, with a surface that seemed to shift and flow. "Open fire!" Amy shouted, bringing her plasma rifle to bear on the nearest creature. The blue energy bolt struck the Jactar warrior center mass, and Amy watched in horror as the creature barely flinched. The plasma that should have burned through any known armor simply scattered across its surface like water hitting stone. "It's not working," Danny screamed as his own shots proved equally useless. "The energy weapons aren't penetrating their skin." Around them, the militia's plasma rifles hummed with desperate fire, but the Jactar advanced without slowing. Their bio-armor seemed to absorb the energy attacks, growing darker and more solid with each hit. Amy watched her friends fall one by one as the creatures moved through their defensive positions like they were made of paper. The training, the advanced Federation weapons, the promises of galactic protection, none of it mattered against an enemy that seemed immune to their most powerful weapons' in desperation. Amy ran toward the old museum that housed artifacts from Earth's colonial period. Her grandfather had been a collector of military antiques, and she remembered the display of ancient weapons that the Federation had ordered removed from active service. Breaking the glass case with her rifle butt, Amy grabbed an old cavalry sword that had belonged to a Union officer during the American Civil War. The steel felt cold and familiar in her hands, nothing like the sleek energy weapons she had trained with. The Jactar warrior that had been pursuing her rounded the corner just as Amy raised the blade. The creature's multiple eyes focused on the primitive weapon with what might have been amusement, but that expression changed to shock when the steel bit deep into its neck. Black blood sprayed across the museum floor as the creature collapsed, its bio-armor offering no protection against the simple metal blade. Amy stared in amazement at the sword in her hands, then at the dead alien at her feet. "Danny, get over here!" she shouted to her surviving squadmate. "Grab one of these old weapons from the display." Meanwhile, in space above New Denver, the battle was going just as poorly for the Federation fleet. Admiral Sullivan watched her sensors as ship after ship fell to the Jactar bio-vessels. The enemy ships seemed to adapt to their energy weapons with each passing moment, their organic hulls growing more resistant to laser fire and plasma bombardment. "Admiral, we're losing the Meridian and the Constellation," reported her tactical officer. "Their adaptive armor is evolving faster than we can adjust our weapons." Kate gripped the arms of her command chair as another human vessel exploded in a ball of fire. The enemy ships moved like living things, their hulls rippling and changing as they absorbed the Federation's most powerful weapons. Signal the retreat, Kate ordered, her voice heavy with defeat. All ships fall back to the secondary defensive line. As the human fleet withdrew from New Denver, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The Jactar had appeared after thousands of years with armor that seemed specifically designed to counter energy weapons. It was as if they had been preparing for this exact type of warfare down on the planet's surface. Amy Rodriguez and the few surviving militia members had barricaded themselves in the museum, surrounded by the ancient weapons that had somehow proven more effective than the galaxy's most advanced technology. Outside, the Jactar forces regrouped, their bio-armor already beginning to adapt to the new threat, but for the first time since the invasion began, Amy felt a spark of hope. If a simple sword could kill one of these creatures, then maybe humanity's old ways weren't as primitive as the Federation believed. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the oldest weapons are the most effective, and that in a universe of energy shields and plasma rifles, cold steel could still cut through the darkness. President Claire Thompson sat in the emergency session room deep beneath the White House, surrounded by the most powerful leaders in human space. The holographic displays showed the grim reality of the Galactic War. Red markers indicated fallen Federation worlds, and the pattern was clear. The Jactar were winning. "The situation is critical," reported General Paul Mitchell, his weathered face showing the strain of sleepless nights. "We've lost contact with 17 Federation fleets in the past week. The Jactar bioships adapt to energy weapons faster than we can modify our attack patterns." Around the table sat the leaders who would decide humanity's fate. Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared via hologram from her flagship, her uniform showing the wear of constant battle. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the weapons historian, had been recalled from her research station to provide expertise on humanity's military past. "General Mitchell, what options do we have?" President Thompson asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Ma'am, I've been reviewing classified files that we sealed when we joined the Federation," Mitchell replied, activating a secure holographic display. "Before we adopted galactic standards, humanity maintained extensive stockpiles of what the Federation calls primitive weapons." The display showed massive underground facilities scattered across Earth and the outer colonies. Warehouses filled with rifles, artillery pieces, tanks, and missile systems. Mountains of ammunition that had been deemed obsolete by galactic standards. "How extensive are these stockpiles?" asked Secretary of Defense Robert Chun. "Massive," Mitchell replied. "We have enough conventional weapons to equip every human military unit 10 times over. The Federation required us to store them rather than destroy them, as part of the historical preservation clause in our membership agreement." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward in her chair. "There's something else the Federation doesn't understand about human warfare. We didn't just develop weapons, we perfected the art of killing with them. Our entire species evolved through constant conflict." She activated her own display, showing the progression of human warfare through the centuries. While other species developed beyond physical combat, humanity refined it. "We created weapons for every possible situation, from hand-to-hand combat to orbital bombardment." Admiral Sullivan's image flickered as she spoke from space. "I've received reports from the survivors of New Denver. Militia Commander Amy Rodriguez confirmed that steel blades can penetrate Jactar bioarmor. If that's true, then our stored weapons might be the key to stopping this invasion." "The political implications are staggering," warned Secretary Shun. "Using kinetic weapons would violate the Galactic Warfare Accords. We could be expelled from the Federation." "What good is Federation membership if there's no Federation left to be part of?" President Thompson asked quietly. "General Mitchell, what would it take to mobilize our conventional forces?" "Give me 72 hours and I can have human fleets equipped with railguns, missile batteries, and kinetic weapon systems," Mitchell replied. "The real challenge will be training our people to fight the way their ancestors did." Captain Sam Turner, one of the youngest officers in the room, spoke up. "Ma'am, my generation grew up with energy weapons, but we still remember the old ways. Every human child learns about the battles of Earth's history. We just need to remember how to use that knowledge. Dr. Vasquez nodded in agreement. Human military doctrine was built on adaptability. We learn to fight in every environment, against every type of enemy. The Federation's standardized approach makes them predictable. The Jactar adapted to energy weapons because that's all they've faced for thousands of years. But can we really make a difference? Asked Admiral Sullivan. The Federation has been fighting this war with their most advanced technology. What makes us think our old weapons will work better? Because the Jactar have never faced them, replied General Mitchell. Their bio-armor evolved to counter energy weapons. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight, except we're the ones with the guns. President Thompson looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. Each one understood the magnitude of the decision before them. They could follow Federation protocols and likely watch the galaxy burn, or they could break galactic law and fight the way humans had always fought. There's something else to consider, Dr. Vasquez said slowly. Human weapons technology didn't stop evolving when we joined the Federation. We continued developing kinetic systems for asteroid mining, construction, and industrial applications. We might be able to adapt those technologies for military use. Captain Turner's eyes lit up with understanding. The industrial railguns we use for launching cargo pods could be modified for ship-to-ship combat. And our construction mechs could be converted into walking weapons platforms. The mining charges we use for asteroid extraction are essentially high-explosive warheads, added Admiral Sullivan. With some modifications, they could be devastating against bioships. General Mitchell pulled up another display showing human industrial capacity. We have manufacturing facilities across 27 worlds. If we convert even half of them to weapons production, we could outfit our entire military with conventional weapons within a month. And the other Federation species? Asked President Thompson. They'll think we've lost our minds, replied Admiral Sullivan. But if we can prove that kinetic weapons work against the Jactar, they might be willing to learn. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Humanity was proposing to abandon the advanced technology that had made them part of the galactic community and return to the weapons of their violent past. There's one more thing, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. Human military training included something the Federation species have never experienced: close combat. We know how to fight hand-to-hand, how to use melee weapons, how to kill with our bare hands if necessary. You're talking about boarding actions, realized Captain Turner. Getting inside their bioships and fighting them directly. Exactly, Vasquez replied. The Federation fights at a distance with energy weapons, but humans remember how to fight. Up close and personal. We could train boarding parties equipped with swords, axes, and other melee weapons. General Mitchell stood up from his chair. Ma'am, I request permission to begin Operation Throwback. We'll retrofit our fleets with conventional weapons and train our forces in pre-Federation combat techniques. President Thompson looked at each face around the table one final time. The decision would change humanity's relationship with the galaxy forever, but it might also save that galaxy from destruction. Permission granted, General, she said firmly. Gentlemen, ladies, we're going to war the human way. As the meeting ended, Dr. Vasquez remained behind to speak with the President privately. Ma'am, there's something else you should know. If this works, if we can defeat the Jactar with conventional weapons, it will change how the galaxy sees humanity forever. How so, Doctor? We'll go from being the newcomers who needed to be taught galactic standards to being the species that saved the galaxy by ignoring those standards, Vasquez replied. Humanity will become the military power that other species turn to when their advanced technology fails them. President Thompson nodded slowly. Then we better make sure we win, Doctor. Because if we lose, there won't be a galaxy left to judge us. Captain Sam Turner watched the final preparations on the loading dock of the human fleet staging area. Workers in mechanical suits carried massive railgun assemblies toward the ships, while technicians installed missile launchers where energy cannons had once been mounted. The sight would have horrified Federation observers, but Turner felt a strange sense of coming home. "Captain, the Liberty is ready for combat trials," reported Chief Engineer Linda Hayes as she approached with grease-stained hands and a satisfied smile. "We've mounted 6 railguns on the primary weapon deck and loaded the missile bays with old-fashioned explosive warheads." Turner nodded, checking his tactical display. The human fleet had been transformed in just 3 days. Ships that had once carried the sleek energy weapons of the Federation now bristled with the angular, brutal-looking guns of Earth's military past. "What about the boarding teams?" Turner asked. "Sergeant Amy Rodriguez has been training them around the clock," Hayes replied. "She's teaching Federation combat techniques to kids who grew up with plasma rifles. Half of them have never held real sword before." In the training bay, Rodriguez stood before a group of young Marines who looked nervous and excited in equal measure. She held an ancient katana in her hands, its steel blade reflecting the harsh lights of the military facility. "Forget everything you learned about energy weapons," Rodriguez told her students. "This is about getting close enough to touch your enemy and making sure they don't get back up. The Jactar have never faced weapons like these because the galaxy forgot how to use them." Private Danny Walsh, barely 20 years old, raised his hand. "Sergeant, why didn't the Federation keep some conventional weapons as backup?" "Because they got comfortable," Rodriguez replied. "They won their wars with energy weapons for so long that they forgot there might be enemies who could adapt to them. Humans never had that luxury. We fought each other for thousands of years with every weapon we could imagine." She demonstrated a basic sword technique, her movements fluid and deadly. The blade seemed to sing as it cut through the air, and the young Marines watched with the fascination of people seeing something completely new. "The key is to remember that these creatures have never evolved defenses against steel," Rodriguez continued. "Their bioarmor stops energy, but it can't stop a sharp edge moving fast enough. You get in close, you strike hard, and you don't give them time to adapt." Meanwhile, in the command center, Admiral Kate Sullivan reviewed the battle plans with her senior staff. The first target would be the Jactar, forces besieging the human colony of Kepler 442b. It was a strategic choice close enough to human space to allow for quick resupply, but far enough from Federation core worlds to avoid political complications. "The enemy has been bombarding the colony for 6 days, reported Intelligence Officer Mark Johnson. "Their bioships are using some kind of living artillery that adapts to the colony's energy shields. The defenders won't last much longer." "Then we better make this work," Sullivan replied. "Signal the fleet to prepare for hyperspace jump. It's time to test whether our grandfather's weapons can save the galaxy." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442b system, and Turner felt his breath catch at the sight before them. The Jactar bioships were massive, organic things that pulsed with their own life. They moved through space like predators, their hulls shifting and changing as they absorbed the energy weapons fired by the colony's defense platforms. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," came the voice over the communication system. "Today we find out if the old ways still work. Target the largest bioship and prepare to fire on my command." Turner gripped his command chair as the Liberty's railguns charged up. The sound was different from energy weapons, a deep, mechanical that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. This was the sound of metal preparing to kill metal, the way humans had fought for centuries. "Railguns locked on target," reported Weapons Officer Sarah Kim. "All missile batteries loaded and ready." "Fire," Sullivan ordered. The railgun projectiles shot across space at a significant fraction of light speed. Simple chunks of tungsten accelerated to incredible velocity. They struck the Jactar bioship with the force of small asteroids, punching through its adaptive armor like it was paper. The effect was immediate and devastating. The bioship's hull, which had been flowing and changing to counter energy weapons, suddenly solidified around the massive wounds. Black fluid leaked into space as the creature's internal system struggled to cope with damage it had never evolved to handle. "Direct hit," Kim reported with barely contained excitement. "The bioarmor isn't adapting to kinetic impact." It's like it doesn't know how to respond. Turner watched as the other human ships opened fire with their railguns and missile batteries. The Jactar bioships, which had seemed invincible against Federation energy weapons, began to fall one by one. Their organic hulls, designed to absorb and adapt to energy attacks, offered no protection against simple kinetic force. "Admiral, the enemy fleet is breaking formation," reported the tactical officer. "They're trying to retreat, but their bioships are too damaged to escape." On the Liberty's observation deck, Rodriguez watched the battle with grim satisfaction. The weapons the Federation had called primitive were tearing through the galaxy's most feared enemy like they were made of tissue paper. "Captain Turner, request permission to launch boarding parties," Rodriguez said over the communication system. "There's a damaged bioship that's still functional. We could capture it and learn more about their technology." Turner looked at Admiral Sullivan's image on the tactical display. "Permission granted, Sergeant. Take your team and show the galaxy what human Marines can do with cold steel." The boarding shuttle approached the wounded Jactar bioship, its hull scarred by railgun impacts. Rodriguez and her team of sword-carrying Marines prepared for humanity's first close-quarters combat with an alien species in over 1,000 years. Inside the bioship, the Jactar warriors waited in chambers, pulsed with organic light. They had never faced boarding parties before Federation species fought from a distance with energy weapons. The concept of enemies who would actually enter their ships seemed impossible. Rodriguez was the first through the airlock, her katana gleaming in the strange light of the alien vessel. The Jactar warrior that met her was 8 feet tall with claws that could cut through steel, but it hesitated when it saw the primitive weapon in her hands. That hesitation costed its life. The steel blade cut through the creature's bio-armor like it was cloth, and black blood sprayed across the organic walls. The other Marines followed, their swords and axes making short work of enemies who had never learned to fight against melee weapons. "This is Rodriguez to Fleet Command," she reported as her team secured the bioship's bridge. "The boarding action is successful. These creatures have no training for close combat. They've never faced enemies willing to fight hand-to-hand." Back on the Liberty, Turner watched the battle's conclusion with a mixture of relief and amazement. The Jactar fleet that had seemed unstoppable was now floating debris, destroyed by weapons that the Federation considered obsolete. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from the colony," reported the communications officer. "The siege is broken. The remaining Jactar ground forces are retreating to their landing ships." Sullivan's voice carried a note of wonder as she addressed the fleet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just proven that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Signal Federation command and tell them that humanity is ready to teach the galaxy how to fight a real war." The Battle of Kepler 442b was over, but Turner knew it was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn that in a universe of energy, weapons and adaptive armor, there was still no substitute for good old-fashioned human violence. Commander Ryan Hayes stood in the main assembly hall of the newly established Galactic Kinetic Warfare Academy, watching representatives from 12 different alien species attempt to learn how to use human weapons. The sight would have been comical if the fate of the galaxy had not depended on their success. "No, Ambassador Velkoth, you must grip the rifle firmly against your shoulder," Hayes instructed the tall crystalline being who was struggling with a basic assault rifle. "The recoil will knock you over if you hold it loosely." The Veltari ambassador, whose species was made of living crystal formations, adjusted his four-armed grip on the weapon. When he fired, the kinetic round punched through the target with a satisfying crack that echoed through the training facility. "Remarkable," Velkoth said, his voice ringing like wind chimes. "This primitive projectile achieves what our most advanced plasma cannons cannot. How did your species develop such effective weapons?" "We had a lot of practice," Hayes replied simply. "Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other with every weapon we could imagine. What you call primitive, we call proven." Across the Academy, similar scenes played out as Federation species struggled to adapt to human military doctrine. The aquatic Mergan learned to use underwater crossbows that worked in their liquid environments. The insectoid Clictor discovered that their natural speed made them excellent with melee weapons designed for their six-limbed anatomy. Dr. Elena Vasquez moved between the training groups, documenting how each species adapted human weapons to their unique physiology. Her research would become the foundation for new military technologies that combined human kinetic weapons with alien innovations. The cultural exchange is fascinating, Vasquez noted as she watched a group of Zentari engineers modify a human sword to resonate with their energy manipulation abilities. Each species brings something new to our weapon designs. The most promising development came from Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, who had been assigned to create the first mixed-species combat unit. Her team included humans trained in traditional warfare, Veltari crystal shapers who could create vibroblades from their own bodies, and Clictor warriors whose natural armor made them perfect for close combat. The key is learning to fight as one unit while using each species' natural strengths, Santos explained to her diverse group of soldiers. Humans provide the tactical knowledge and weapon expertise. Veltari crystal manipulation creates adaptive weapons. Clictor speed and armor make perfect assault troops. The first test of this new approach came at the Battle of Sigma Draconis, where a massive Jactar fleet had gathered to launch an assault on the Federation's core worlds. The enemy bioships had learned to expect kinetic weapons from human forces, but they had never faced the combined military might of multiple species working together. Santos stood on the bridge of the mixed-species vessel Unity, watching the tactical display as the Jactar fleet approached. The enemy bioships moved in their typical organic patterns, their hulls already beginning to thicken in anticipation of kinetic weapon attacks. "All units, this is Colonel Santos," she announced over the communication system. "Remember, they expect us to fight like humans. Today we show them what happens when the galaxy learns to fight together." The battle began with the Veltari ships, firing crystal-tipped projectiles that punched through Jactar bio-armor before exploding into thousands of razor-sharp fragments. The enemy had adapted to solid kinetic rounds, but their defenses had no response to weapons that changed form after impact. "Clictor assault ships, begin your attack run," Santos ordered as the Jactar fleet struggled to adapt to the new threat. The insectoid warriors launched themselves at the bioships in small, fast vessels that moved like their natural flight patterns. When they breached the enemy hulls, they fought with weapons designed for their six-limbed anatomy, moving through the organic corridors faster than the Jactar could respond. Human boarding parties followed, their traditional weapons cutting through defenders who were still trying to understand how to fight multiple species with different combat styles. The psychological effect was devastating. The Jactar had never faced enemies who could adapt faster than their bio-armor could. "Evolve. Enemy flagship is breaking apart," reported the tactical officer as the largest Jactar bioship began to collapse under the combined assault. "Their command structure is failing." Santos watched as the battle turned into a rout. The Jactar forces, faced with weapons and tactics they could not predict or adapt to, began retreating across the entire front. For the first time in the war, they were the ones fleeing on the surface of a distant world at the edge of Jactar space. The ancient queen of the Horde felt something she had not experienced in millions of years: fear. Her bioships transmitted their death screams across the psychic network that connected her species, showing her images of enemies that fought with weapons her kind had never encountered. The queen's massive form, larger than most starships, pulsed with dark energy as she reviewed the battle data. Her species had conquered countless civilizations by adapting to their energy weapons, but these new enemies fought with projectiles, blades, and tactics that seemed to change with every encounter. "Impossible," the queen whispered in a voice that could crush mountains. "No species fights this way. Energy weapons are the natural evolution of warfare. These creatures use the tools of primitives, yet they defeat us." Her advisors, bioforms that had been grown specifically for tactical analysis, struggled to understand the new threat. "Great Queen, These humans seem to have convinced other species to abandon their advanced technology. They fight with metal and crystal and organic compounds instead of pure energy. And they win, the Queen added with growing unease. Our bio-armor cannot adapt to weapons that change form, composition, and delivery method with each battle. These enemies do not follow predictable patterns. Back on the Unity, Santos received reports from across the battlefield. The mixed species approach had proven devastatingly effective, with each alien race contributing unique adaptations to human weapon designs. Colonel, we're receiving surrender signals from 3 Jactar bioships, reported Communications Officer Peter Wright. They're requesting terms for their crew's survival. Santos looked at the tactical display with amazement. In all the previous battles, the Jactar had fought to the death, their bioships self-destructing rather than allowing capture. This was the first time they had ever requested surrender. Grant their request, Santos ordered. Have our science teams ready to study their technology? If they're willing to surrender, they might be willing to talk. The interrogation of captured Jactar warriors revealed crucial information about their species. They had evolved in a galaxy where energy weapons were the only form of warfare, developing bio-armor that could adapt to any form of directed energy attack. Physical weapons had been extinct in their part of space for so long that they had no evolutionary defenses against them. Their entire military doctrine is based on adaptation to energy attacks, reported Dr. Vasquez after studying the captured aliens. They literally cannot comprehend weapons that work through kinetic force, chemical explosions, or physical cutting. It's like they've never seen violence that isn't energy-based. The revelation changed everything. The Jactar were not invincible, they were simply specialized predators, who had never encountered prey that fought with claws instead of energy beams. Humanity's violent history, once seen as a shameful weakness, had become the galaxy's greatest strength. Send word to all Federation worlds, Admiral Sullivan ordered from her flagship. The galaxy has learned to fight like humans, and the tide of war has turned. We're going to take this fight to the enemy's home territory. As news of the victory at Sigma Draconis spread throughout Federation space, species that had never considered physical weapons began retrofitting their fleets with kinetic systems. The galaxy was remembering how to fight with tooth and claw, with metal and fire, with the brutal efficiency that had made humanity the ultimate survivors. The Jactar Queen felt the fear growing in her ancient heart as reports of defeat reached her from every front. Her perfect bio-armor, the weapon that had conquered 1,000 worlds, was useless against enemies who fought like savages and won like generals. For the first time in her eternal existence, the Queen began to consider the possibility that her species might lose. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship as the combined Federation fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Jactar home system. The sight before them defied imagination, a dark star surrounded by massive bioships that looked more like living worlds than vessels of war. At the center of it all, the Queen's ship pulsed with malevolent energy larger than some moons. All ships report ready for final assault, announced Communications Officer Ben Carter, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. The mixed species fleet is in position, and Captain Turner's boarding teams are prepared for the assault on the Queen's vessel. Sullivan nodded, watching the tactical display as hundreds of ships from dozens of species prepared for the battle that would determine the galaxy's fate. Human vessels bristled with railguns and missile launchers, while alien ships carried weapons that combined their natural abilities with human kinetic principles. "Signal the fleet," Sullivan ordered. "Today we end this war the way humanity ends. All wars by getting close enough to look our enemy in the eye." On the assault ship Phoenix, Captain Sam Turner made final preparations with his elite boarding team. Sergeant Amy Rodriguez checked her katana one last time, the ancient steel blade that had started humanity's return to traditional warfare. Around her, Marines from a dozen species prepared weapons that would have horrified Federation observers just months ago. "Remember, the Queen's bioship is going to be unlike anything we've faced," Turner addressed his team. Intelligence suggests she's been alive for millions of years and has never been directly threatened. She won't know how to handle close combat. Private Danny Walsh, now a veteran of 3 boarding actions, raised his hand. Captain, what if her personal defenses are different from the regular bioarmor? Then we adapt, Rodriguez answered before. Turner could speak. That's what humans do. We find a way to kill things that shouldn't be killable. The battle began with the Federation fleet opening fire at maximum range. Railgun projectiles and kinetic missiles streaked across space toward the Jactar bioships, which had formed a protective barrier around their queen. The enemy vessels had learned to expect kinetic weapons, but they still struggled to adapt to the sheer variety of attacks coming from the mixed species fleet, Veltari. Crystal ships fired projectiles that changed structure mid-flight, becoming networks of cutting wire that sliced through bioarmor. Clicker assault vessels launched swarms of guided munitions that moved like living insects, too small and numerous for the bioships to track effectively. Enemy outer defenses are collapsing, reported Tactical Officer Sarah Kim as she watched the battle unfold. The combined assault is overwhelming their adaptive capabilities. But the real test came when the boarding shuttles launched toward the Queen's massive vessel. Turner's Phoenix led the charge, followed by a dozen smaller craft carrying the galaxy's most experienced close combat specialists. The Queen's bioship was a nightmare of organic architecture, its corridors pulsing with veins of dark energy and chambers that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. The boarding teams cut their way through the outer hull with thermite charges and industrial plasma cutters, weapons the Federation had never considered for military use. First team is inside, Rodriguez reported as her Marines spread out through the alien vessel. The internal defenses are unlike anything we've seen. The walls themselves are trying to attack us. Turner followed his boarding teams into the bioship, his sword ready as they moved through corridors that seemed designed by a madman's fever dream. The Queen's personal guards were larger and more dangerous than regular Jactar warriors, but they fell to human steel just as easily as their smaller cousins. Deep within the ship, the Jactar Queen felt the boarding parties cutting through her vessel like infections in her body. She had ruled the Horde for eons, conquering civilizations across multiple galaxies, but she had never faced enemies willing to enter her personal domain and fight her directly. Impossible, the Queen whispered as her bioship's defenses failed. To stop the invaders. No species fights this way. They should attack from a distance with energy weapons like all civilized races. Her advisors, bioforms grown from her own tissue, struggled to understand the tactical situation. Great Queen, these creatures seem to prefer close combat. They use metal blades and chemical explosives instead of proper weapons. And they are winning, the Queen admitted, her massive form trembling with rage and something she had never felt before: genuine fear. Turner and his team reached the Queen's throne chamber after fighting through what felt like miles of living corridors. The chamber was vast, with walls that pulsed like a heartbeat and a ceiling that disappeared into organic darkness. At the center sat the Jactar Queen, a creature so ancient and massive that she seemed more like a living mountain than a being. So, you are the ones who have brought ruin to my empire, the Queen spoke, her voice causing the chamber walls to vibrate. You fight with the weapons of primitives, yet you have defeated my perfect bioarmor. Your armor was perfect for fighting energy weapons? Turner replied, his sword gleaming in the strange light of the chamber. But humans never forgot how to kill with steel. The Queen rose from her throne, revealing her true size. She stood, nearly 30 feet tall, with multiple arms ending in claws that could cut through starship hulls. Her bioarmor was thicker and more complex than any they had encountered. But Turner noticed something crucial: it still moved and flowed like all Jactar defenses. You cannot harm me, the Queen declared, advancing toward the boarding team. I am the perfect evolution of my species. I have conquered 1,000 worlds. Rodriguez stepped forward, her katana held in a perfect guard position. You've conquered worlds that fought with energy weapons. You've never faced anyone who learned to kill the hard way. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. The Queen's massive claws could have torn through any energy shield, but they moved too slowly to catch Marines trained in close combat. Her bio-armor, designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks, offered no protection against steel blades moving at precisely the right angles. Turner's sword found the gap between armor plates that the Queen had never needed to protect, while Rodriguez's katana opened arteries that had never bled. The creature that had ruled the galaxy's most feared empire fell to weapons that her civilization considered obsolete. As the Queen's massive form collapsed, her death scream echoed through the psychic network that connected all Jaktar forces. Across the galaxy, bioships that had been fighting with desperate fury suddenly stopped their attacks and began broadcasting surrender signals. "All Jaktar forces are standing down," reported Admiral Sullivan as she watched the tactical display. Aboard her flagship, their command structure has collapsed with the Queen's death. The war was over, ended not by the Federation's most advanced technology, but by humanity's oldest weapons wielded with deadly precision. In the months that followed, the galaxy underwent massive changes. The Galactic Warfare Accords were rewritten to include kinetic weapons as standard military doctrine. Humanity, once seen as primitive newcomers, became the Federation's premier military advisors. General Paul Mitchell addressed the new Galactic Defense Council from the rebuilt Federation headquarters. Representatives from every member species listened as he explained the lessons learned from the war. "The galaxy made a fundamental error," Mitchell said, his words carried to every world in Federation space. "We assumed that technological advancement meant abandoning physical weapons. We forgot that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective." He gestured to a display showing children from dozens of species learning to use both energy weapons and traditional blades. "From now on, every Federation world will maintain both energy and kinetic weapons capabilities. We will never again be defenseless against an enemy that adapts to our standard tactics." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now the Federation's chief military historian, added her own observations. "The Jaktar War taught us that diversity in warfare is just as important as diversity in diplomacy. A galaxy that fights with only one type of weapon is a galaxy waiting to be conquered by something immune to that weapon." The story concluded with a scene that would have been impossible before the war. On the training grounds of New Geneva, human instructors taught alien students the art of swordsmanship while alien masters shared their own combat techniques with human Marines. Admiral Sullivan, now head of the Federation's Combined Military Command, watched the training with satisfaction. "In choosing swords over lasers, humanity didn't just save ourselves," she observed. "We saved the galaxy by teaching it how to fight." The great irony was not lost on anyone involved. Humanity's violent past, once seen as their greatest weakness, had become the galaxy's greatest strength. In a universe of advanced technology and energy weapons, the simple steel sword had proven to be the great equalizer. The galaxy would never forget the lesson learned. During the darkest days of the Jaktar invasion, sometimes the old ways are the best ways, and there is no substitute for the warrior's heart that remembers how to fight with whatever weapon comes to hand.